Well, friends, I'm here to tell you a story I'll never forget. This won't be a typical story, because, honestly, hiding the truth just isn't my style. Especially when the truth is so prickly that you can't approach it without a touch of humor. Imagine, I naively believed that family is the group of people who will always support you, especially when it comes to your dreams. No matter how naive it may sound, I've always been an optimist, an idealist, a kind of romantic. I believed that, come what may, they would be there for me, lending a shoulder. So, when I needed help, I turned to them. And, as you might already guess, they did something you probably won't be surprised by. But let me start from the very beginning. So, I had a plan. Not just a plan, but a whole fixation. I wanted to start a business, something with heart and purpose, not just a venture to make quick money and forget about it. When I shared this idea, my loved ones would say, "Good for you. You can do it. We'll be with you all the way." And, that made me happy. Well, of course, these are your people, they're supposed to be your support, your foundation. But as soon as I started organizing things, they began to back away like rats from a sinking ship. And not just backing away, but pretending they didn't even know me. At first, of course, it was subtle. We have our own expenses, our own problems, but if you need anything, we're always here. And so on. Do you think I suspected something was off? Not at all. At the beginning, when I was still full of enthusiasm and naive belief in my family's support, I started noticing something strange. At first, it seemed like small inconveniences. Someone got sick, someone had problems at home. But then, I started seeing a pattern. Rejection after rejection, the excuses became more and more far-fetched, and with each call, my hopes melted like ice under the sun. After yet another conversation, where I was once again subtly but coldly reminded that they had more important matters, I felt something inside me snap. Painfully, as if a string of hope had been pulled to the limit and then broken. Could it really be that everyone I trusted, everyone I relied on, just turned their backs on me? I sat alone in silence, trying to make sense of what was happening, but I couldn't believe it. It felt like a punch in the gut, and I didn't know if I could recover from this disappointment. That evening became a point of no return for me, the moment I finally understood, you have to rely on yourself alone. My plan was coming together, everything was going smoothly, until one fine moment when that support I had counted on vanished entirely. You know how it is, when you believe that you have people beside you who will always be your rock, ready to help in any situation, it's like you've got wings. That's exactly how I felt. And they, of course, encouraged me, "Don't worry, we're here, we'll help, everything will be top-notch." A sort of support club for my sky-high project, or so it seemed to me at the time. And naive as I was, like a kid trying to ride a bike without training wheels for the first time, thinking he's already mastered it. But here's the problem, that support started springing leaks. Despite all these rejections, I decided, I won't give up. If everyone's turned away, I'll go it alone. But just as I gathered the courage to make that decision, it seemed fate had another challenge in store. I went to the investor I had been counting on, convinced he would support me at the last minute. But another surprise, he declined, and it felt like the final defeat. For a moment, I even lost faith in myself, all my hopes, my time, my plans teetering on the edge of collapse. I thought, was I wrong to even start this in the first place? But that moment also awakened something in me. I realized it was too late to turn back, and even if this leap felt like a jump into the void, I was no longer afraid. This decision, though risky, became the line after which my true ascent began. At first, small steps, but like with a ship, once the water starts rising to your ankles, soon enough you'll feel it at your chest. The first signal came when I approached my brother to ask for his help. Well, I thought, now he'll support me. He always jokes, like, you want to move mountains, but you don't even have a shovel, and I'd reply, the mountains are in my head, and a shovel can always be found, don't worry. We always understood each other, and I never imagined he would suddenly act like he didn't even know who I was. We met in a cafe, and I laid out the so-called business plan for him, even joking a bit so he'd better grasp all the nuances. And then he starts mumbling about, yet another vacation. Seriously? Instead of talking about my bright future, which he supposedly supported, he says, you know, brother, I've decided to take a break for a couple of weeks. And money's a bit tight right now. I sat there, listening, not understanding, was this a joke or what? I was seriously telling him I needed a friend who would help, and he was talking about some vacation and money issues. And you know, my brother, things aren't sugar-coated for me either, but I've always been there when you were groaning about your life difficulties. Fine, I thought, maybe he really is just tired. All right. I told him, well, then, happy vacation, and went on my way. But here's the thing, I still believed. Honestly, I naively thought this was just one of those little hiccups everyone has. The next day, I went to my sister, and, well, she's always been so understanding, or so I thought. I explained the situation, what I was dreaming of, and of course, I assumed she would support me right away. We're close, and she's always saying, you're my dear brother, who else, if not me? And what do you think? My sister made the classic retreat, oh, you know, I've got a bit of a health issue right now. Feeling a bit under the weather, and the doctor said I need to rest. That's when I realized the situation wasn't just strange, it was absurd. I understood that everyone needs rest, everyone has their own issues, but isn't it odd how suddenly everyone starts getting sick or having financial problems as soon as I ask them for something specific? Well, you know, as they say, like clockwork. I held on, telling myself, don't be paranoid, it's just a phase. Maybe they really are all just busy right now. But, unwilling to give up, I decided to turn to another relative, my cousin, Vitaly. He's always, so to speak, in the game. He works in a field where money flows, you know, like a magnet for finances. And so, I came to him, respectfully, Vitaly, I'm here to ask for your wise advice and help. He immediately came out with the classic line, you know, I'm always on your side, supporting you, and as I listened, I thought, oh, here it comes. And sure enough, after long words of support, he said, you know, things are a bit complicated at work right now, I'm being promoted, and that means new responsibilities. And anyway, I can't deal with anything other than work right now, need to fully settle in. But as soon as I'm free, I'll help you right away. And then I realized that, either I'm living in some bad sitcom, or everyone is seriously and hopelessly just making excuses. But you know, the painful part wasn't so much the betrayal, but this moment of realization when you start understanding that the brilliant image you had dreamed up of your family was just a bubble. The moment of realization hit me like a bolt of lightning when, for the last time, I decided to turn to my parents. I thought, well, the last resort. Grown, serious people who are always on guard. I went to their house, we sat down in the kitchen, and without dragging things out, I told them everything as it was. Dad looked at me with a serious gaze, and Mom quietly nodded. And you know, I was already thinking that here, at least, I'd get some understanding. And then, believe it or not, they hit me with yet another, undoubtedly convincing reason. Son, we're always on your side, but right now we need to sort out an important matter with renovations. The house is old, you see, and then it dawned on me. All of them are just geniuses of elaborate excuses. Like, seriously, renovation, it's like a new, endless reason they keep in reserve whenever they want an excuse to disappear into the shadows. This talk about renovations frankly finished me off. But, you know, as they say, life is a harsh teacher. With bitterness in my heart, I got up and said, well, if that's the case, then I'll just go my own way. And at that moment, a flood of emotions overwhelmed me. Disappointment, anger, and even a bit of pain because I truly believed these people were by my side for my sake, not just when it was convenient for them. Well, friends, that was the moment I started seeing the world through different eyes. I'm no longer an idealist, and, as they say, it's important to know whom you're living with and whom you're asking for help. But this story is only beginning because now I know exactly what to do next. And believe me, what I'm going to do won't go unnoticed. So, I return home after what turned out to be the final act of the tragedy. Sitting in my apartment, staring into space, I thought, so, how did it come to this? Why is it that whenever someone else needs something, I'm always on their side, always ready to help? But when it's my turn, everyone I believed in just disappeared, as if they were never there. You know, usually, at such points in life, you either sink into depression or start crafting a revenge plan. Well, I thought to myself, sitting around and suffering is definitely not my style. I decided it was time to act, and not just act, but to show them all that I'm not someone who can be betrayed and forgotten. And you know what's interesting? A thought flashed through my mind. What if this was just a game of fate? Maybe life was just testing my resilience? Maybe this was some sort of test of how far I was willing to go to reach my dream. So instead of falling into despair, I decided it was time to create something that would turn everything upside down. The first step was quite mundane but necessary. I wrote down all my ideas, plans, visions, and, this may sound cliché, but I realized that everything I was striving for was actually within my reach. Yes, maybe it wasn't as easy as I had imagined. Maybe there wasn't any support from loved ones, but, damn it, I still had the strength to do this. Then I remembered that there were a few friends nearby who had once hinted they wanted to help. I thought long and hard about whether it was worth trusting anyone again because, after such family support, I found it hard even to imagine that someone might genuinely help out of a good heart. But turning down their help would have been foolish. Well, I thought, let's give it another shot. I met with a friend who works in IT, a smart and rather ambitious guy. I figured that if he found the idea interesting, he'd definitely help. And what do you think? We sat down, discussed all the details, and this time, I didn't build up big expectations. I simply sat there, explained how it all worked, and said, "So, what do you think? Want to give it a shot?" He looked at me and said, "Why not?" Honestly, I was a bit surprised that he didn't start making up excuses or talk about renovations. He just agreed. That's why, sometimes, it's worth trusting not your blood relatives but people who understand your aspirations. The next few months became a real school of life for me. My friend turned out not only to be a useful partner but also an excellent strategist. He showed me how to organize the business, connect different resources that I hadn't even thought of before. You know, when someone truly gets into your idea, they will work with you, even if it costs them time and effort. But don't think it was all smooth sailing. There were moments when I seriously thought about giving up. Of course, there were problems, but in those moments when everything was falling apart, when it seemed like nothing was working, I remembered my family helpers. And it worked. Every time a new obstacle came up, I just recalled their crafty excuses. Their renovations are a serious thing, and it was like extra fuel for me. I could practically see their faces in front of me, and it gave me the strength to keep going. One day, my friend and I decided to invite an investor to a meeting. This was someone we found through acquaintances, quite serious, with extensive experience. And he was so impressed with our enthusiasm and the way we explained all the project's advantages that he immediately decided to invest. That day was a true victory for me. It felt like a breath of fresh air, as if I was finally beginning to get what I had been striving for so long. Months passed, and our project started gaining momentum. My relatives started calling me, the very ones who initially supported me in words but vanished when it came to actual help. They called and began asking, "So, how are things going with you?" All of them were suddenly interested, especially my brother, who was once going on vacation but now, it turns out, was ready to help, as a brother, to support the family business. And imagine this moment. I'm sitting at a meeting with all of them, what you might call the final act. I look at these familiar faces, and I can't help but laugh. Laugh at how they think that, after all this, I'll just forget their support. All so serious, all so eager to help, suddenly everyone has both time and resources. I tell them directly, so, what happened with your renovation? How's your health? Or maybe you need another vacation? They all look at me as if I just arrived from another planet. My mom even started to make excuses. You understand, those were special circumstances. Oh yes, circumstances. Well, I thought, if that's the case, I'll just arrange my own circumstances. And then I told them, my dear friends, you know how they say, better late than never, but I've got everything under control here, so your help is no longer needed. Now I understand who was truly with me when I needed it. So, there's no need for me to accept your support now. You know, that was a moment of complete triumph. Seeing them stand there, trying to say something, to justify themselves but unable to find a single argument, it was worth all the nerves I had spent along the way. I realized that I had reached a new stage in life, a stage where I was fully in control of my destiny. And that's not all. I decided it was my turn now to test people for support and loyalty. So I invited all my new friends and partners to celebrate our success. We threw a wonderful party, toasted our victory and the new phase of life. Now, when I look back, everything I went through seems like an important part of my journey. I realized that it was the challenges and betrayals that became my best teachers. I'm grateful for the highs and the lows. They showed me that true strength isn't in money or status but in how you handle difficulties and who remains by your side till the end. This realization brought me peace. Now I understand, success is not only what you achieve but also the path you take to get there. And every step on this path shaped me, gave me wisdom that no book could offer. I learned that the most important thing is to stay true to your principles, to trust yourself, even when it feels like the world is against you. Now I'm ready for any challenges because I know, this path made me who I am. And most importantly, I can help others find their way. At that moment, I realized that you really can't blindly trust anyone, not even those who seem closest. I now understood that true support and loyalty are not just words but actions that speak for themselves. So, I decided to move forward with those who truly understand what support means. This is not the end of my story because now I have a new plan, a new goal, and I know that I can achieve everything on my own. And you know, I'm now even curious about what other surprises life has in store. But one thing I can say for sure, I won't waste my time on those who don't value me anymore. You know, after that party, life picked up such a pace that I barely managed to keep everything under control. It was that moment when you stop looking back, stop seeking approval, and just move forward, like a train at full speed. That experience taught me one crucial thing: the people who truly stay by your side aren't just the ones who talk about support but who show it through actions. I remember, right after our big breakthrough, I started receiving a slew of meeting invitations, partnership proposals, and collaboration offers. Things became more and more interesting because people who previously hadn't even noticed me were now willing to pay any price just to get me on board with their terms. And though I found it pleasantly surprising, I knew that now I needed to be cautious. Life had shown me clearly that pretty words are worth nothing if they're not backed by actions. And then, one evening, I got a call from an old friend with whom I hadn't spoken in several years. We'd been friends since childhood, and I thought that this call was a pleasant surprise. He started by telling me how much he admired what I was doing, how proud he was of me, and that it would be great to meet and discuss everything. All right, I thought. Why not? Sometimes the past does deserve a second chance, doesn't it? We met up at a cafe, and as I looked at him, he seemed like the same old friend, but something about him had changed. There was a strange tension, as if he wasn't just here for a friendly chat. And, you know, I'd gotten used to reading between the lines with people, so I immediately sensed something. And I wasn't wrong. Within a few minutes, he started talking about this grand idea he had, one that would turn the world upside down. And who, if not me, could help him with it? It all sounded eerily familiar. I even smiled a little. How ironic. Here I was, a person who once naively believed the world would turn my way if I put in all my effort, now listening to someone else asking me to put my all into his grand project. At first, I stayed silent, just listening and observing as he juggled words, pretending this conversation was pure chance rather than a well-thought-out operation. At one point, I felt like I was watching a movie about my own life, with everything playing out according to the same old script. He was talking about his dreams, how wonderfully they'd all come together if we teamed up, how this would be a real success. But I wasn't that naive kid anymore. I could see that this meeting was just a way to use me, to capitalize on what I'd achieved even after everyone around me had disappeared. So I, not waiting for him to finish, looked him in the eyes and said, "My friend, I see you have big plans, but you know, I've already invested everything I had into my business. And now, it's time for me to focus on building what I've already created. But I wish you success and strength because dreams aren't something you can just take from someone else." You know, in that moment, I saw everything I wanted to see in his eyes. Disappointment, surprise, maybe even a bit of anger. But what can I say? I'm a different person now. And that's not even the end. From that moment on, my real trials began. When people find out you've achieved success on your own without their support, they start acting like real actors, trying to worm their way back into your life by any means possible. Calls started coming in from distant relatives I hadn't even seen in years. All of a sudden, everyone was proud of me, everyone had always believed in me, and even that same cousin who once had a difficult period suddenly wanted to become my business partner. Well, I decided not to turn everyone down immediately. Teasing them a little became my secret satisfaction. I'd invite them for coffee, discuss plans, and then watch as they tried to show they'd always been there for me, that they'd always supported me. But when it came down to specifics, I loved repeating the very phrases they'd once told me: "Sorry, it's a hard time right now," or "I have my own problems to focus on." And every time, I'd see them turn red, their faces change. It was that same feeling I had back then when they left me alone with my problems. It was a kind of revenge, but honestly, even this revenge soon began to bore me. Because I realized that the real victory was not laughing in the faces of those who'd let me down, but leaving them behind and moving forward, without wasting my time on the little things. And you know what's most surprising? After a while, I realized that that period of loneliness, when everyone abandoned me, was the most valuable time of my life. Because that's when I truly understood who I am, what I want, and who I truly need. I became the person I wanted to be, but without illusions and without others' promises. Now I began to develop my business in a completely different direction. My friend, who had been with me since day one, and I decided to go international. Of course, this required enormous effort, but nothing could scare me anymore. That experience with my family had taught me that the most important thing is not to give up, even when the whole world is against you. I knew that my true friends and partners were those who'd stayed with me when things were hardest. Now, I'm preparing for new challenges, and I'm not afraid of any obstacles. Because now I know, if you have a true dream, it's worth every effort. Let the world envy, let those who once left me think they still have a chance. Because I'm already one step ahead, and I won't stop until I reach everything I've planned. My story isn't over yet, but now I know exactly how to tell it and for whom. And, you know, I'm already curious to see who else will try to convince me they were with me from the beginning. But no one will fool me now because I know who I am, what I want, and who is truly there when it's needed. Life has taken on new momentum. It seemed that now everything around me was moving forward faster than I could have imagined. Success, like an avalanche, attracted new opportunities, and each day my little dream was becoming a big reality. But, as they say, every medal has its reverse side. Along with new chances, old acquaintances started to reappear in my life. Those same relatives, colleagues, even friends from the past who previously seemed to have forgotten about me. And now they were all back, now with hints of mutual benefit and support that was always there. The first surprise was a call from an old acquaintance I probably hadn't seen since college. He called me and said how happy he was about my success and how he'd love to reconnect. I'm no fool, of course, and immediately knew that this call wasn't a coincidence. But I thought, why not see where this leads? We met at a restaurant he suggested. He looked great, suit, polished shoes, confident gaze. And then he started his game. You know, I always knew you'd achieve great success. Even back in college, I said you had potential. I sat, listening to him, and wanted to laugh because, in reality, we'd barely spoken all those years. But the real masterpiece came a bit later. After all his compliments and sincere words of support, he finally got to the point. So, I have this one idea that we could implement together, he started grandly, as if he were about to offer me the chance to create a new internet. He continued on about some huge project that would require a small investment. And, of course, I, his old friend, am the one with the resources to help him. I sat, looking at him, thinking, oh, my dear schemer, you haven't changed a bit. I decided it would be amusing to play along with him a bit. I began asking pointed questions like, and what exactly are these investments? What's expected of me? He, of course, started laying out his terms. Well, you know, this is all for our common good, just a few tens of thousands, and everything will be smooth sailing. At that moment, I couldn't hold back and asked him directly, tell me honestly, where were you when I actually needed support? He was taken aback for a moment, but quickly pulled himself together. Well, we were all busy with our own stuff, life throws its own curveballs, you know. Suddenly, I felt genuinely sad. I remembered all those moments when I really needed support, when those who called themselves close simply vanished into thin air. And now they come around when everything's already in place, when I'm at my peak. And what do they think? That I'll just open my wallet and say, here, take whatever you need? And you know what I did? I simply stood up, looked at him, and said, buddy, I think this is your cafe, so you can cover the bill yourself. And I walked out, leaving him there, both shocked and furious. After that incident, I realized one simple truth: success doesn't bring new friends, it just shows the true faces of the people you already knew. People come into your life like tourists, they admire your achievements, take pictures against the backdrop of your success, but when it's time to help clear the rubble, no one is around. Gradually, I learned to tell apart people who come with sincere intentions from those who simply want to take advantage of my position. This gave me the strength to keep moving forward without being affected by others' words and promises. The following week, I received a call from another relative. Oh, this one was a real professional at playing the family support card. He calls and says, how's it going? How's business? We're all so proud of you. I'd heard these words before, and they'd lost their meaning. But I decided to reply, thank you, everything's going great. I've got everything set up, and now I'm planning to expand to new markets. Naturally, he immediately became interested and started asking, maybe I could help somehow? I've got some connections, you know. I listened and felt how the audacity and cynicism of these people exceeded all possible limits. They came to me when everything was ready, when all the hard work had already been done. And now, after I'd invested so much time and effort, they decided they could take their cut. But this time, I was ready. I answered him, you know, I already have reliable partners who've been with me from the beginning. And they are the people I want to continue with. But thank you for the offer. In that moment, I felt true relief. That was the moment I understood I was fully in control of my life, my decisions, and my team. Those who were with me when everything was just beginning deserved this victory. And those who showed up only now could only watch from the sidelines. Life continued to throw challenges my way, but now I was prepared. I no longer feared losing support, because real support isn't just words, it's actions. And, you know, I decided that now it was my time to live, and not for others, but for myself. Because only then do you achieve true freedom and independence. With each passing day, I felt more and more like my life had become the scenario I'd once only seen in films. Only now, I wasn't a spectator, I was the main character. And, you know, I actually liked this role. Feeling confident, strong, responsible only for my own decisions, it's a feeling that genuinely changes a person. But along with this, new challenges were appearing on the horizon, and I understood that I needed to be ready for them. The first serious challenge that came my way involved the need to expand the business beyond the city. My partner and I decided it was time to move to the next level, not just within our country's market. It was a mutual decision, and we believed that going international would be a real breakthrough. However, as soon as the prospect of great success appeared, so did great risks. Our project was tied to technology and marketing. We'd created a unique platform that helped businesses automate processes, optimize advertising, and operate more efficiently. And so, when it was time for our first presentation to an international investor, I felt that this would be a real test. At our first meeting, this investor showed a lot of interest, but as it turned out, his requirements were much higher than I had anticipated. What surprised me most was how he saw a certain gray area in our idea that he wanted to exploit for his own purposes. You know, this was one of those moments when success begins to demand a moral choice from you. He offered me an amount that would be hard to turn down, but the offer came with additional conditions. And then I realized, what I had created with pure intentions could instantly transform into something entirely different if used for someone else's interests. I took some time to think. It was a hard night. I sat in my office, staring at all the plans and blueprints my partner and I had been developing for months. It became clear to me, either I would refuse and keep my idea clean, or I would agree and let strangers set the terms. Then, I remembered all those moments when I was alone. I remembered how my family and friends turned away from me, how that forced me to change my approach to life. I made the decision not to betray my principles. By morning, I returned to our investor and simply said, "Sorry, but we can't work under these conditions. We'll do this ourselves." You know what's interesting? He was surprised, but at the same time, he seemed to respect my choice. That decision made me realize that true success isn't only what you achieve but also how you achieve it. And if you betray your principles, all the money in the world won't restore your lost peace of mind. Our business began expanding, even without that investor. We found other opportunities and resources, perhaps smaller in scope, but they allowed us full independence. I was certain, it's better to take the hard path but stay honest with yourself. Working day and night, my partner and I built a team that shared our views and supported us in everything. And that was the most valuable thing, feeling that people beside you understand the idea just as deeply as you do. Of course, there were new challenges. One day, we faced a security issue. With the growth of our platform came an increase in users, which created a need for secure data protection. One day, when I came into the office, our technical department informed me about a major system breach. It was a gut punch, as we all understood that if user information fell into the wrong hands, it would jeopardize not only our business but also our reputation. That night, I stayed in the office with my entire team. We worked without rest to resolve the situation. It was tough, as each of us knew that even a small mistake could come at a high cost. Finally, after several days of intense work, we managed to neutralize the threat. But it made me realize, in business, you can never relax. There will always be those who will try to capitalize on your success, even if it means breaking every moral law. Again, it reminded me of all those friends and relatives who only showed up when everything was going well. During the times when we fought to overcome challenges, they were nowhere to be found. And with each new obstacle, I realized more and more that true partners stay by your side regardless of the circumstances, while those who only come around when things are smooth are simply taking advantage of your hard work. Another year passed. Our business was thriving, and now we weren't only stable but also attracting new clients from around the world. But once again, old acquaintances began to resurface, the same ones who left me at the beginning of the journey. Some of them even tried to cozy up, saying how they'd always believed in me and were so proud of me. And, you know, I even stopped feeling anger or disappointment. All these people became just a reminder of what I had gone through. Their words no longer held any weight. And so, at yet another peak moment, when we'd reached a new milestone, I decided to hold a small celebratory dinner for my team. It was my sincere wish to thank those who had been with me, who had worked without expecting anything but shared victory. We gathered together, laughed, reminisced about all those difficult but wonderful moments when we were just starting out. At the end, I said to my colleagues, "You know, I used to think that success was about achieving your goals. But now I understand that success is about the people who walk alongside you, no matter the hardships. And I am grateful to you for that because, without you, I wouldn't have achieved anything." Everyone who was there understood me without words. They'd already walked this path with me and knew how important it was to have people who wouldn't betray you. This dinner became a sort of conclusion for me. I realized that now I had a team, a family that I had built myself, one that wouldn't abandon me at the first sign of trouble. These were people who shared not just the work but also the spirit, and for me, this was a true revelation. The next morning, when I woke up, I knew my journey was just beginning. We'd already reached many goals, but there were new peaks, new projects ahead. And I was ready for them because now I had not only a business but also a true team that would never let me down. And I knew that no matter how many more challenges lay ahead, I had already passed through the hardest part, the stage of betrayal and disappointment. And now I can say, I did it, and now I am ready for anything fate has prepared. After that celebratory dinner with my team, I felt like I had finally reached a certain inner harmony. At last, I understood that now I had not just a business or project but a whole world of like-minded people that we'd built together. Every one of my employees was no longer just a colleague but a part of a team filled with a spirit of support and trust. We shared not only work tasks but also successes and failures, which, like in any business, were plenty. With each passing month, we solidified our positions, and the company continued to grow. But, as always happens, the higher you rise, the more people are watching you, waiting for you to stumble. Competitors, envy, and people trying to slow our growth started to appear. At first, it was just minor nuisances, unpleasant rumors that spread among our clients, but then more serious challenges began to emerge. One day, one of our key clients, who had been with us for over a year, was convinced to switch to a competitor. They were offered twice the price we were charging, and, of course, this was tempting. Losing this client hit us not only financially but also in terms of reputation. We had always prided ourselves on the fact that clients chose us for quality, not for price. This incident forced us to rethink our strategy. We decided that we wouldn't get involved in a price war but would instead offer clients innovative services that our competitors couldn't. It became a matter of quality, and we set about further developing the product. This period was full of trials because not every client understood our goals. But those who stayed received a new experience, and we became their strategic partners rather than just service providers. My partner and I worked nights, developing new solutions and improving our platform. This was a time when each of us gave everything we had. And you know, the more we worked, the stronger we became, as each difficulty, each client loss only strengthened us and our product. Eventually, our strategy began to pay off. New major clients arrived, valuing us for our innovation and stability. While competitors fought over pricing, we built long-term partnerships, and this approach yielded results. Our reputation grew, and the company continued to thrive. However, on this path, the same people from my past began to reappear. The old friends, whom I had said goodbye to after the initial success of the business, upon hearing about our new triumph, decided to remind me of their existence. The phone calls began again, with warm congratulations, and on social media, messages started popping up from old acquaintances suddenly remembering how close we used to be. And then, one day, I received a message from someone I hadn't seen in over 10 years. It was an old classmate, one of the most successful people in our class back then. He wrote about how happy he was for my success and how he would love to meet to discuss shared perspectives. Interestingly, this person once seemed to me invincible, and now he was seeking a meeting with me. Perhaps this was the best indicator of how life changes people, changes circumstances, changes the balance of power. We met in a cafe. He was dressed in an expensive suit, confidently started telling me about his successes and outstanding projects. But within the first few minutes, I could tell it was just a facade. Between the lines of his stories, I heard notes of disappointment and insecurity. And eventually, he got to the main point. He proposed joining forces and creating something big together. I listened to him, and it all became clear. He wasn't there for a partnership, he was there for help he needed but was too proud to ask for outright. I decided not to give him false hopes. I told him straight that my priorities were different now, and that while I was willing to offer him advice, I wasn't ready to invest my time or resources into his project. He sat there, listening, and I saw the understanding slowly dawn on his face. We weren't in the same carriage of life anymore. Maybe he thought that his past successes would give him a right to my support, but now he realized that his past achievements held no meaning for the present. This meeting became symbolic for me. A symbol of how people change, of how my perception has changed, and of how I've learned to see the true faces of those who come into my life. From that moment, I made another important decision, to focus on my own growth, on creating new projects that would benefit others and be worthy of my efforts. My business continued to grow, and with it, so did my confidence in myself and in my team. We reached new heights, and now our goal was not just to make money but to make a genuine contribution to the industry we were working in. We began investing part of our revenue into charitable projects, supporting education, and helping young specialists who were just beginning their business journeys. This time, I no longer needed approval from anyone else, nor did I need outside advice. I knew I was doing the right thing, and this was my path, my choice. And the most important thing was to be at peace with myself and true to my principles. And maybe the biggest lesson I learned from all this was understanding that true support comes from within. Those who stayed with me did so because they truly understood me, not because it was convenient. Those who left showed that they weren't worthy of my time or sympathy. And now, looking back at this whole journey, I see not only betrayal but also the strength I gained through these challenges. Now I could say, I became the person I wanted to be, and it was worth all the effort. With each new step in the business, I felt that my life had completely transformed. What once seemed like unshakable principles now took on a deeper meaning. I was not only a businessman but also a person who finally felt the full weight of his decisions. The company was expanding, and other entrepreneurs began reaching out to me, looking for partnerships, advice, or just conversation. My experience and our path to success became known beyond our small circle and began to reach beyond the boundaries of the city. One evening, as I was working late in the office, preparing new strategies for our projects, I got a call from my old partner. He was one of the people who had supported me at the very beginning, with whom we'd started our first joint business. After several years without news from him, this call surprised me. His voice was calm, perhaps a bit anxious, and he began talking about how much everything had changed since we worked together. He spoke at length about how happy he was for my success, how he'd watched my achievements. And then, stumbling a bit, he asked if I'd be willing to meet with him to discuss the possibility of renewing our partnership. At first, I hesitated. This person was part of my past, from when we were just starting out. And although our paths had diverged back then, I had always held a certain respect for him. We arranged a meeting at a cafe where we used to discuss our very first plans. This place was symbolic for us, and even after all these years, it brought back memories of those moments when we were completely unsure of ourselves but full of determination to change the world. When we met, he looked a bit tired, slightly older than his years, but still confident. He told me about his problems, about how his company had lost clients, about the competition that had pushed him out of the market. And I saw in him the same thing I had seen in many other acquaintances. He was looking for support, for a hand that would help him rise again. This moment was incredibly symbolic for me because it reminded me of myself back when everything was just beginning and when so many people turned away from me. But, unlike the others, he had been there for me from the start. And although I wanted to say no and keep moving forward on my own path, I felt something that made me consider his proposal. Maybe it was just nostalgia, or maybe it was the desire to prove that I could be not only tough but also noble. I took some time to think it over and told him we could discuss his situation in more detail. After several days of thinking and consulting with my current partner, I decided to give him a chance. Maybe it seemed like a risk, But, in the end, all big business decisions involve risk. We agreed on terms for our partnership, and he rejoined our team. But this time, I wasn't the naive entrepreneur I'd once been. All our agreements were clearly laid out, responsibilities were divided, and I knew that I would no longer rely solely on promises. This new phase of our partnership required complete commitment. My old partner actively joined the work, and to be honest, it was a new experience. We once again began working side by side, and I saw how his desire for success was reborn. It was like he had come back to life, regaining his former confidence. But along with that, I noticed that he started making independent decisions again, without consulting me, as we had agreed. One of these decisions turned out to be particularly risky. He had entered into a deal with a company with a questionable reputation, justifying it by saying that it would help us quickly increase our profits. Naturally, I objected, as I knew that such a deal could damage the reputation we had worked so hard to build. But he didn't listen. He argued that we had no choice now and that sometimes you have to make compromises. This situation strained our relationship. Tension began to build between us, and we started arguing more frequently over various issues. I understood that this turn of events could lead to another split. And this time, I decided not to wait for things to get worse. After a lot of thought, I went to him and said that it was time to make a choice: either we stick to our strategy and stay true to our principles, or I would end the partnership. His response was unexpected. He agreed to my terms, but at the same time, he made it clear that he no longer wanted to stay in the shadow of my decisions. We made a deal that divided our company into two independent branches, each of us overseeing our own direction. It was a tough decision, but we both understood that it was for the best. This experience taught me yet another important lesson. Partnership isn't just about collaboration, it's a constant balance between personal ambitions and common goals. Sometimes, that balance can be maintained, and sometimes it can't. But the main thing I learned is that every new step in business should be accompanied by a clear vision of what you want to achieve and what you're willing to sacrifice. My company continued to develop, now with the new division of roles. I was grateful that my partner and I were able to find a compromise and not destroy what we had built over so many years. We both continued to work, but each in our own sphere, and this gave our business a new push forward. There were new challenges ahead, but now I was ready to face them with complete determination and confidence in my abilities. This experience strengthened me and made me realize that, regardless of the circumstances, the most important thing is to stay true to your principles and not to be afraid of tough decisions. After splitting the company into two independent branches, I felt that, perhaps for the first time in all this time, I could breathe a sigh of relief. The previous years had been intense, filled with numerous challenges and decisions that often bordered on risk. Now that my partner and I had separated, I had the chance to focus on my own branch of the business, to develop it according to the principles and ideas I considered right. Immediately after we finalized the new agreement, I began working on a large-scale strategy to enter the international market. On the surface, it seemed like a logical continuation of our achievements, but I knew that this step would require not only financial investment but also a strategic approach. Knowing that I was now solely responsible made me work even harder. The first country we chose to enter was Poland. It became a kind of testing ground for my strategy. Our services were adapted to meet local needs, and I decided to invest a significant portion of the budget into market research to understand the specifics of the consumers. This would determine not only our entry into the Polish market but also the reputation we wanted to build abroad. To avoid relying solely on my own assumptions, I hired a team of local specialists who helped us understand the market. They conducted research that allowed us to develop a marketing strategy and adapt our products and advertisements. It was a lengthy process, and sometimes it seemed that we wouldn't have the strength to see it through, but over time, I realized that this approach was the right one. The first few months on the new market showed mixed results. Although our product was beginning to interest local entrepreneurs, there was another side: competition. Local companies saw us as a threat. They began lowering their prices on their products, which put us in a difficult position. At first, I thought we wouldn't be able to withstand this struggle, but I decided to focus on quality and resilience rather than on pricing. This became my core strategy, to offer not just a product but a solution to our clients' problems. We started offering free training sessions for our clients, organized seminars where we not only presented our products but also taught them how to use them as effectively as possible. Eventually, this approach started to pay off. Clients who had initially been hesitant became our loyal partners, understanding that we valued their trust and were ready to invest in their success. When the Polish market was finally mastered, I decided not to stop there. Our next targets were other European countries. We developed a separate strategy for each new market we planned to enter. This approach required serious investments, but I knew that without this, no serious results could be achieved. My experience working in the Polish market had shown me that adapting to local needs and mentality was the key to success. Expanding internationally also became a kind of test for my team. All the people who had been with me from the beginning now took on new responsibilities, and I watched as they grew alongside me. This was a time when each of us broadened our horizons and acquired new skills. Some employees who had started with the simplest tasks were now holding key positions in the company, and I was proud that together we had managed to reach such a level. Of course, with all this growth came new difficulties. Not all employees were ready for such responsibility. Several key team members decided to leave the company when they felt they couldn't handle the new workload. This was hard for me because I considered them part of my family, but I understood that growth requires change. Sometimes you have to let people go if they can't adapt to new demands. The international market turned out to be tougher than I had expected. We started working in Germany and France, and on these markets, competition was even fiercer than in Poland. Large corporations operated there, with massive budgets and influence over clients. We couldn't compete financially, but we focused on a unique approach to clients. We held personal meetings to build long-term relationships with potential partners. This method took more time, but eventually, it started to pay off. One of the biggest clients we gained in Germany was a medium-sized entrepreneur with big ambitions. He couldn't afford the services of large corporations, so our personalized attention and flexible approach turned out to be decisive for him. We became more than just service providers to him, we became partners who were always ready to help. His recommendations brought us new clients, and gradually, we carved out our own niche. As time passed, our company began gaining recognition in the European market. This served as a confirmation that a strong strategy and a loyal team could overcome any obstacle. But this success did not come easily. There were moments when I doubted my decisions and wondered if it would have been better to stay on the domestic market and avoid the risks. However, looking back now, I realized that all these challenges made us stronger. With our expansion into international markets, our financial capabilities also grew. Now I was able to invest in developing new products, attracting talented specialists from different countries. I began to take an active role in charitable projects, supporting young entrepreneurs who were just starting out. I wanted them to also have the chance to fulfill their dreams, regardless of the challenges they might face. Of course, all these achievements did not go unnoticed. The media started writing about our company, and I was invited to conferences where I shared my experiences. At first, I felt a bit embarrassed by the attention, but over time, I realized that my example could help others believe in themselves. When I look back at the journey, at all those moments when things seemed difficult and success felt unattainable, I feel an incredible sense of gratitude. All those challenges, those ups and downs, that's what made me who I am today. Now I know that success is not just about the result but about the journey you take to reach it. And that journey is the most valuable part because it shapes your character, your principles, and your perspective. My story isn't finished yet. There are still many plans ahead, and I know that new challenges will come. But now, I am ready for anything. I know that I have a strong team, experience, and the willpower to overcome any difficulty. And with all of that, I move forward, opening new horizons, to create something more than just a business, to create a legacy that will endure after I'm gone. Expanding the business and gaining new opportunities, I often reflected on how it all began and how unpredictable my path had been. Sometimes it felt like a long journey up a mountain, You keep climbing, feeling exhausted and worn out, but the view becomes more breathtaking with each step. Sometimes I wondered if it was time to pause because I had already achieved so much. But that inner feeling, the knowledge that even greater heights lay ahead, inspired me to keep going. Eventually, our company entered a new era. We brought on new investors who supported our ideas and provided the financial backing we needed to expand to other continents. This was a massive step forward, requiring even more responsibility, more energy, and more time. I knew that this move would make us a global player, but I also understood that, personally, it would mean diving even deeper into the business. However, along with this came a growing desire to find balance. The years I had dedicated to my business hadn't gone unnoticed. They had made me strong and confident, but at the same time, they had taken away a lot of time I could have spent with my family, with those who had been with me from the very beginning. I understood that a life devoted solely to achievements became one-sided. And, as paradoxical as it sounds, I felt the need to return to what truly mattered. One day, I met up with an old friend who, unlike me, had chosen a simpler path in life. He hadn't achieved a spectacular level of success, but he was always content with his life. We spent the evening reminiscing, and I saw how happy he was, how much he valued the moments he spent with his family, how focused he was on the simple joys of life. That evening, I found myself thinking that maybe I really did need to find my own balance between work and personal life. After that meeting, I decided it was time to start delegating some of my responsibilities. I realized that the business had grown to a point where I could entrust its management to my team. The people who had worked with me over the years understood our principles, our mission, and I knew they would do everything possible to preserve and build upon our achievements. So, I called a meeting with the management team and announced that I would be stepping back from daily operations, passing on the primary responsibilities to my trusted colleagues. Of course, this decision wasn't easy, as I had always kept control firmly in my hands. But I understood that it was time to trust those whom I had personally nurtured into professionals. This was a significant step, and my team accepted it with enthusiasm and responsibility. I saw in their eyes not only readiness but also gratitude for my trust in them. This decision gave me the freedom I had long dreamed of but had put aside in favor of the business. For the first time in a long time, I was able to spend more time with my family, to travel, to open myself up to new horizons beyond business. I began to feel my life changing for the better, and this feeling was as thrilling as the success I had worked toward for so many years. One morning, as I sat on the terrace of my house watching the sunrise, I felt a profound sense of peace. I realized that success isn't just about achievements but also about understanding your role in your own life. It's the ability to stop for a moment, look back, and understand that your journey has had meaning, that you've managed to go through it all and stay true to yourself. Now, as I consider my future path, it seems that my real achievement is not just the business but my ability to find my inner balance. It's about finding joy in the simple things, in the time spent with family, in knowing that I've managed to balance my ambitions with what truly matters. And now, I'm ready to share my knowledge and experience, to help those just starting their journey, to show them that life isn't only about highs and lows, but about finding your own meaning and following it. Looking at it all, I feel that there are still many opportunities ahead, but now I'm moving toward them with new understanding and complete peace of mind. Having found a balance between work and personal life, my perception of success changed. I realized that the greatest value in life is what we leave behind, what we pass on to others. My journey was filled with highs and lows, lessons and victories, and now I wanted to use this experience to help others find their way. I started actively participating in charitable and social projects. My team and I created a program to support young entrepreneurs just beginning their journey. I saw in them the same drive for achievement that I had at the start, but I also noticed fear, uncertainty, and doubts. I understood what they were going through, and so I felt a special need to share my experience with them, so they could avoid the mistakes I had once made. We organized seminars and training sessions, inviting successful entrepreneurs to share their stories, and this became a new mission for me. Every young entrepreneur we supported reminded me of myself. I saw how their eyes lit up with ideas and the desire to reach their goals, and it gave me energy. The feeling that you are becoming part of someone's journey, helping these people find their place in the world, was as valuable to me as the success I had achieved on my own. At the same time, I began writing a book. It wasn't just an autobiography or a story about my business, but rather a collection of lessons I'd learned throughout my life. I shared my view of success, my principles, my falls, and my victories. I wanted to leave something more than just a business, something that could inspire others to find their own path and not be afraid to follow it, even if it was tough and winding. This book became a kind of therapy for me. It helped me reevaluate everything I had gone through and reminded me of the people who had been there with me, the challenges we had overcome. Each chapter was like a return to the past, and as I completed it, I felt like I was letting go of a part of the burden I had carried for so long. When the book finally came out, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. I knew that this was my legacy, not just for my children or my company but for everyone searching for their path, for those wanting to change their lives. And if this book helps even one person find their way, then it was all worth it. Gradually, I stepped away from the day-to-day responsibilities of the company. Now, I was not so much a leader as a mentor, someone who was always ready to offer advice or support. My team had become independent, and I knew they were in good hands. This was the end of one great journey, but at the same time, it was the beginning of a new one. My life philosophy had become clearer. Life isn't just about reaching the peaks but also about how you walk the path, who you meet along the way, and how you help others. And now I was ready to share this with everyone who needed support on their own journey. I realized that true success is not just what you create but also what you leave behind. It's the people you inspire, the ideas you implement, and the world you help build for the next generation. Now, as I look back at everything I've been through, I feel grateful. Every challenge, every rise and fall has made me who I am. And if I was able to make it through, so can those just beginning their own journey. And now, my mission is to help them along that path. This story may be coming to an end, but I know that there are still many possibilities and adventures ahead. And no matter where this new stage of life takes me, I will always remember the path that made me who I am. This isn't the end, it's simply a new beginning. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it has inspired you not to fear difficulties and to pursue your dreams, even when the path seems impossible. If my story made you think or gave you confidence, then take action. Believe in yourself, take that first step because true change starts with action. I also apologize for any mistakes in the text. This narrative was created with the help of external software, and I am not a native speaker, but I sincerely tried to do my best to share my story with you as clearly as possible. Thank you for your understanding and support.